exemplar. Can you say us, please, if you were appointed Minister of Information Policy of the Ukrainian government yesterday, what would be your action plan facing the hybrid war launched by Russia?
To all the friends, the minister could gather in the EU, in the US, in Canada and in other democratic countries. And I think that's basically about raising awareness about what the situation in Ukraine is, and also to create a sort of Ukrainian caucus, I mean Ukrainian supporters abroad. And I think that's very important to show that Ukraine really is in progress, in the good directions, and also to debunk all the false and full narrative coming from Russia. And I think that's very important, first of all, to address this international audience, because without external support, I think that Ukrainians won't be able to win the information war against Russia. Then, of course, there is, I would say, the domestic side. And of course, it's quite a difficult question, because if Ukraine is not able to increase its own legitimacy by putting forward reform, fight against corruptions, and this sort of things, it's a sort of tool for Russia's propaganda that, of course, could influence the public opinion abroad and also undermine the trust of Ukrainian people to their own government. And I think that the question of the legitimacy is basically very, very important. Then, of course, there is a third dimension for Ukraine's Minister of Information, which is to create the condition of, I will say, an inclusiveness in Ukraine, of the civil society, and of all the organizations, including, of course, the Ukrainians, that are bringing a positive message and a great awareness about the Ukrainian society. We have to show that the Ukrainian society is really advocating liberal values, human rights, unethical principles, that basically the Ukrainian society has a European mindset. And it's very important to show that, of course, to the international audience, but also to the Ukrainian citizens. Many of them fought in Maidan. They fought also to liberate their countries against government illiberal, supported by Russia. And we have to show also to the Ukrainian people that the sacrifice that the people made in Maidan, and that the people also are making when fighting Russia. I'm thinking about the 10,000 people also killed by Russia, wounded by Russia, all the 2 million people displaced because of Russian aggressions.
There will be a new presidential election in France. What impact, in your opinion, it could have on French-Ukrainian relations?
I think, of course, it's very important elections, because France is divided into two different sides, two different opinion mindsets. One side of the opinion, non-mentioning only, the far rights, Marine Le Pen, and also the radical left, like Jean-Luc Mélenchon. Many people, not mentioning them, of course, are still supporting Russia, especially the former president, Nicolas Sarkozy, his former prime minister, François Fillon, and some others are saying that we have to engage with Russia, to negotiate with Russia. It's basically Russia is a country we have to cooperate with in order to fight against terrorism, and also, which was not said, to counterbalance the US influence in Europe. And I think that we have to debunk these narratives, and I think it's very important also for the French people, including myself, to show that those discourses are just not only unfair towards Ukrainians, because they are undermining, of course, the Ukraine's legitimacy, but they are also just lies. about, you know, the security issues, about the values, about the principles that we, in democracies, that we have to share. But there is another part of the political spectrums, including French President François Hollande, actually, but also some other people in the Conservative Party, like the former Prime Minister Alain Juppé, who are actually really against Russia's aggressions, who are favoring Ukraine because, you know, Ukraine is mostly about liberal values, and they are, I think, really ready to engage a new form of cooperation with Ukraine. And of course, from that point of view, the presidential elections are really pivotal because we have two different narratives, two different views of the world, two different acceptations of the security. And of course we can do, and I speak as a French citizen, we have to do everything that the people that are really advocating liberal values win.
In your opinion, what is the role of global Ukrainians, these young Ukrainian leaders, highly educated, globally connected, that live abroad in different countries worldwide? We call them like expatriates, basically, part of Ukrainian diaspora, to accelerate, what could they do to accelerate the democratic transformation in Ukraine?
They have to show that there are some progresses, you know, in Ukraine. They have, of course, to discuss and to raise awareness about Russia's aggression. Of course, that's part of the job. But of course, regarding, you know, the domestic situation in Ukraine, they are probably more aware than some people living in Ukraine, and only in Ukraine since many years ago, that of course know the old systems that say that we can do nothing against the oligarchs, against, you know, the people who are trying to capture the power for their own interest, and I think that they have to create awareness amongst the Ukrainian citizens that there is another way, that we have to be faithful to might and spirit, and also to show very concretely, because those people are working in the public administration, in the organizations, in business, in the universities, research centers, that there are other ways also to promote reform inside Ukraine. And they have some tools, they have some experience, and I think that their skills are very useful to Ukrainian people. And I think that there's really the job for a foundation like your foundation, for the Open Ukraine's you know, democracy and Ukraine's forum, etc. All the civil organizations, society. I think that they are really able to gather the experience of those people and to put them in one global document or many documents in advocating reforms. And I think that a very concrete toolbox to pursue reform is very important for the Ukrainian people.
Maybe one last question. In your opinion, what history will we take of this period of these 2 years, 2 very difficult years for Israel, all of us?
Well, I think there are many lessons, of course. The first lesson is that they were, in 2014, many people, that take the real risks for their own life to fight for European values. And I think that's, from my point of view, that's the basic lessons. They don't understand democracy as a fight that could bring death, sufferings. It's something very normal. They are not actually vibrating for democratic values. And in one country, which was Ukraine, people sacrifice their life and their very existence for those values. And I think that's an historical lesson which is really unique in the world since probably the revolutions, Velvet revolutions that occur, you know, in some other country like Poland, etc. And I think that's a sort of dramatic lesson that must be heard and understood by the people as well. Then there is probably lesson which is in a way not that brilliant, which is the hesitations, to say the least, and unwillingness for liberal democracies, many EU liberal democracies, but also the US as well, to fight for those values and to support Ukraine in its fight for freedom and for human rights. And I think that's the reluctance for those democracies to combat for freedom, and then, of course, to confront Russia that is promoting, as we know, illiberal values. And I think that this reluctance is very damaging for Europe's reputations, for Europe's legitimacy as well.
To confront Russia or to confront Kremlin?
To confront, I must say, Putin's Russia, to be exact, more precise, and I think that's very important distinctions that you're raising, because there are a lot of Russian people, and I know many of them also who are fighting against dictatorships in Russia. There were, of course, Nemtsov, before them Anna Politkovskaya, there was also Stefan Markelov, there was Nadia Estemirova, and many of them who pay their life, you know, the Lord's life because of that fight. And you have very brave people also in Ukraine demonstrating against Russia's regime, mourning Nemtsov in huge demonstrations. And you probably remember that during those demonstrations there were also Ukrainian flags, that there were some placards saying that we must save Shevchenko as well. And those people who were demonstrating, taking the street for that, they are really brave Russians. And I think that we have, and all the democracies, including, of course, the US, the EU country, must really support all those human rights defenders, all those people advocating for liberty and basic values. They have to do that. And I think that's the other face of Russia, which is a brilliant face, and those brave people really, they deserve, I think, sort of honors, respects, and I think great personal admirations.